Imagine being conscious, fully aware, as your own flesh is chemically transformed into leather over the course of 23 days, not after death, but while your heart still beats and your mind remains trapped inside a body that is slowly, methodically ceasing to be human. This is not a campfire tale meant to frighten children. This is documented history, and it happened to a princess of the Mongol Empire, granddaughter of Genghis Khan himself. Her name was Princess Alaki, and what the shamans did to her in the year 1238 represents one of the most calculated and grotesque punishments ever inflicted upon a living human being. The Mongols called it Holk, the ritual of skin changing. And before you dismiss this as myth or exaggeration, understand that archaeological evidence from Soviet excavations at Karakorum, written chronicles from three separate cultures, and modern forensic analysis have all confirmed that this practice was horrifyingly real. The Mongol Empire in the 13th century was not merely a conquering force sweeping across Asia and Europe. It was a civilization governed by an absolute code of honor known as the Yasa, where failure, especially military failure by those of royal blood, was not simply punished, but spiritually corrected through transformation. Princess Alaki had earned her place in this empire not through birthright alone, but through proven competence on the battlefield. She was one of the rare women to command Mongol cavalry, leading 8,000 warriors with the same authority as any male general. Her lineage traced directly to Genghis Khan through his son Chagatai, giving her both the privileges and the crushing expectations that came with royal blood. In the spring of 1238, she was given what should have been a straightforward mission: secure the mountain passes of Georgia and break the resistance of the Christian kingdoms that had defied Mongol expansion for years. What happened instead became a catastrophe that would seal her fate in the most unimaginable way. Alaki led her cavalry into what appeared to be a vulnerable position near a Georgian fortress, following intelligence that suggested an isolated enemy force ready to surrender. It was a trap the Georgians had prepared for months, concealing their true numbers in the mountain valleys, and when the Mongol horses entered the narrow pass, they were struck from all sides. Boulders rained down from the heights, arrows filled the air like deadly rain, heavy infantry charged from concealed positions, negating the Mongols' greatest advantage: mobility. The battle became a slaughter. Over 4,000 Mongol warriors died in that pass, cut down or crushed, while another 2,000 were captured or scattered into the wilderness. Alaki herself was pulled from her horse and taken alive, a rare fate for a Mongol commander, and one that would prove far worse than death on the battlefield. The Georgians knew exactly who they had captured, and they sent word to the Mongol leadership offering ransom and negotiations, expecting the empire to pay dearly for the return of royal blood. The response they received was swift, cold, and unambiguous. Return Princess Alaki immediately, and no negotiation would follow. This was not mercy. The Mongol court had already decided what would happen to her, and they needed her alive to face it. When Alaki was returned to Mongol territory 3 weeks later, she was brought not to a prison or a court, but to Karakorum, the capital, where the sacred shamans waited. These were not priests in any Western sense, but female keepers of ancient spiritual practices, intermediaries between the physical world and the realm of Tangri, the eternal blue sky god. The head shaman, a woman named Kutula, who had served in this role for over 30 years, explained to Alaki in formal Mongolian exactly what was about to happen and why. This was not vengeance. This was transformation. Alaki's military failure had disrupted the cosmic balance that allowed the Mongol armies to conquer with divine blessing. And only through the Hulk ritual could that balance be restored. Her body would be preserved, transformed, and carried into future battles as both warning and guardian spirit, suspended between life and death in eternal service to the empire she had failed. The process began with quicklime, a caustic substance that, when mixed with water, generates intense chemical heat. The shamans applied it methodically, starting at her feet and moving upward over hours, burning away the outer layer of her skin while keeping her alive through carefully applied herbal pastes that protected her vital areas. Persian chroniclers, who later interviewed Mongol defectors, wrote that her screams echoed from the shamanic compound for 3 straight days as the quicklime stripped her epidermis away, revealing the raw dermis beneath. But the shamans were experts in maintaining life at the edge of death. They forced water and nutrient broths down her throat. They monitored her heartbeat with techniques passed down through generations. Alaki would not be allowed to escape into death, not yet. After the quicklime had done its work, her body was washed with salt water, and then came the second phase, the tanning itself. Oak bark that had been aged for years in underground storage was boiled in massive copper vats until it produced a rich, dark tannin solution, the same substance used throughout the empire to transform animal hides into leather for armor and saddles. Now, it would be used on living human flesh. If you're still watching, if this story has gripped you the way it gripped me when I first discovered it, then please consider subscribing. These are the stories that history often tries to forget, the dark truths buried beneath centuries of silence. And by staying here, by bearing witness to what humans are capable of inflicting upon one another, you're ensuring these voices aren't lost. Let's continue. Alaki was lowered into the first tannin vat, her exposed flesh making contact with the chemical solution that would bind to her collagen proteins and transform them from living tissue into preserved material. The burning sensation was different from the quicklime, described in Armenian chronicles as a fire that comes from within the flesh itself. She was kept in the first vat for 12 hours, then removed and treated with herbal stimulants to keep her conscious, then lowered into a progressively stronger solution the next day. This pattern continued for days. Each morning, a stronger vat. Each evening, medicinal preparations to maintain her strength and awareness. The tannin slowly transformed her dermis into something that resembled leather, darker, firmer, more rigid. Her flesh took on a deep, reddish-black color. The texture changed from soft tissue to something that looked and felt like worked hide. Yet through it all, according to multiple historical sources, Princess Alaki sang, not songs of mourning or regret, but traditional Mongol war songs, the same songs warriors sang as they rode into battle. She sang from the second day until the 19th day, her voice growing rougher as the tanning process affected the muscles of her throat, but never stopping, never begging, never pleading. Some accounts suggest that even Kutula wept while performing the rituals, not from mercy, but from respect for this refusal to break. By the end of 23 days, The shamans had achieved something that seemed to violate every natural law. They had mummified a living person. Alaki's skin had been fully converted to a leather-like substance, preserved and hardened, while her internal organs continued to function. Her joints had stiffened. Her face had taken on a mask-like quality, skin pulled tight over the skull, transformed into something that looked carved rather than grown. Yet, she breathed. Her heart beat. Her eyes moved and showed awareness. She had been transformed into exactly what the ritual intended, a being suspended between life and death, neither fully human nor fully dead, but eternally bound to service. Her preserved body was mounted on a ceremonial pole and carried into battle. Just 3 months later, when a Mongol army returned to Georgia to finish what she had failed to accomplish, at the front of 15,000 warriors, mounted on a war wagon, was the pole bearing Alaki's transformed form. Georgian scouts who saw it approaching thought it was some kind of carved idol, until prisoners brought close to the Mongol lines realized the horrifying truth. The figure on the pole had once been the princess they had captured and returned. The psychological impact shattered Georgian resistance. The Mongol victory was total, brutal, and swift, and captured nobles were brought before Alaki's preserved form before execution, forced to witness what failure against the Mongol Empire truly meant. Over the following decades, Alaki's preserved body was carried into at least 15 major battles across Central Asia, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East. Russian chronicles from the 1240s called her the Leather Princess and attributed supernatural powers to her presence. Hungarian records from 1241 mention a dark idol of human form that the Mongols treated with reverence and dread. Arab historians documented the practice independently, describing preserved failed commanders carried as standards, their accounts matching Alaki's case with disturbing precision. The last definitive mention of her being carried into battle dates to 1258, meaning her transformed form served the Mongol armies for 20 years after her death. That was not quite death, a silent witness to countless battles, a warning carved into human flesh, a punishment so complete that it erased the boundary between the living and the dead. What the Mongols understood in their own brutal way was that there are fates worse than death, and that the human body, under the right conditions and the right hands, can be kept alive long past the point where mercy would have let it go. Princess Alaki's story is not just about punishment or ritual, it's about the terrifying extent to which human beings can transform one another when power, tradition, and absolute belief in cosmic order converge. She was not simply killed for her failure, she was transformed, preserved, and forced to witness the correction of her mistake for 2 decades, carried from battlefield to battlefield as both guardian and warning. And somewhere in those chronicles, in those accounts of her singing war songs, even as her flesh was being turned to leather, there remains an echo of defiance that makes this story not just horrifying, but somehow, impossibly, a testament to the strength of the human spirit, even when that spirit is trapped inside a body that has ceased to be human. If this story has affected you the way it affected me, I want to hear from you in the comments. What strikes you most about Alaki's story? Is it the brutality of the punishment, the endurance she showed, or the fact that the Mongol Empire carried her transformed body into battle for 20 years? Share your thoughts below, because stories this dark deserve to be discussed, remembered, and never forgotten.